Hello, my name is Noah Abji, and today we're going to learn how to do order of operations with decimals and fractions. So, to put it simply, order of operations with decimals and fractions can look really confusing at first, because instead of whole numbers, you have only fractions of different numbers, either represented as actual fractions or decimals with the decimal point. But the simple rule for it is that nothing changes as you use the order of operations. So let's just do a quick review of what the order of operations are and how we would use them in the questions with decimals and fractions. So we always do multiplication and division first and addition and subtraction second. Now, one common misconception is that if you have multiplication and division in the same question, then you should always do the multiplication first. And same for addition and subtraction. If you have addition and subtraction in the same question, you should always do the addition first. That's a misconception because the rule is that you actually do whichever out of those two comes first in the question. So if I had a question where I had both addition and subtraction, and I had subtraction first in the question, I'd actually do the subtraction before I did the addition part of that question. So let's look at some examples of order of operations questions with decimals and fractions. So the first one is 0.3 plus 0.8 times 2 minus 0.5. So with our order of operations, we know that we do multiplication first. So let's do this section first, 0.8 times 2, because the other two operations that we have are addition and subtraction. And our order of operations tells us those come second. So 0.8 times 2 is 1.6. A good way to multiply is to put it above each other as if you're going to normally multiply, and then do 8 times 2, which is 16, and write the last digit below and add a decimal point between. So this is 1.6. So now if we rewrite the rest of our question, we have 0.3 plus 1.6 minus 0.5. Now we have both addition and subtraction here, but since the addition comes first in this question, we'll do that first. 0.3 plus 1.6 is 1.9. So 1.9 minus 0.5. And finally, 1.9 minus 0.5 is 1.4. So we use the same order of operations, except we had decimals in the question this time. All right, let's look at an example with fractions now. So this example has 5/10 plus 1 times 1/2. Now, one rule that I would give with fractions is even though this order of operations doesn't change, you should always try to simplify your fractions first. It makes the question a little bit easier to go about. So 5/10 can be simplified to 1/2 because you have 5 out of 10, which is 1/2 of 10. And so this as a whole can be simplified into 1/2. Now, if you're to do this mathematically, you could divide both the top and bottom by the number 5. So 5 divided by 5 and 10 divided by 5. And that gets you 1/2. So 5/10 is actually 1/2. So if we simplify after rewriting the question, we get 1/2 plus 1 times 1/2. So now we need to do our multiplication first. 1 times 1/2 is equal to 1/2, because 1 times anything equals that number. Now finally, we can bring down the rest of our question and do 1/2 plus 1/2. And when we add 2 halves, we get a whole. So this is equal to 1. All right, so now let's look at some review questions. So here's some practice questions, one with decimals and one with fractions, and use the order of operations. I'll give you a few seconds to pause the video and then explain the answer. All right, so the correct answers to these questions were 1.8 and 1. So let's do the decimal one first. So here we have 0.8 plus 0.2 times 5. So using our order of operations, we know that multiplication and division come before addition and subtraction. In this question, we have addition and multiplication. Even though we have decimals, that order of operations doesn't change whatsoever. So we should do our multiplication first. So we do 0.2 times 5, which is going to simplify to 1. Now, if you were to try and stack them and multiply, it would look like this. Again, we write 0.2 and put 5 under the 2 and multiply. 2 times 5 is 10. So we write the last digit under what we multiplied, and then we put the decimal point. We just bring it down to where it goes. So it's 1.0, which is 1. So now we have 0.8 plus 1, which simplifies to 1.8. Now for a question with the fractions, we have 6/3 minus 1/2 times 2. Now remember, even though order of operations applies the same with fractions, one extra step that you might want to take first is just to simplify any of the fractions in the question if you can. It's not technically part of the order of operations, and even if you don't simplify them immediately, you can still get the same answer, but it makes things a lot more simple. So you can think of it as adding it to the order of operations to save yourself some time. So 6/3 is a fraction here that can be simplified. 2 isn't a fraction and 1/2 is already simplified, but 6/3 is not in its proper simplified form. So 6/3 can be simplified to the number 2. And the reason why is because you can think of it this way. 3/3 would be 1 whole. So 6/3 would be 2 wholes. If you wanted to represent it mathematically, as if you're to do the math to simplify the fractions, you could divide both the top and the bottom by the number 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 3 divided by 3 is 1. And you get 2 over 1, which is just equal to 2. So if we rewrite our question with the simplified fraction, we get 2 minus 1/2 times 2. Now, order of operations tells us that multiplication comes before subtraction, and it doesn't change even though we have fractions. So 1/2 times 2 is half of 2, which is just 1. And finally, if we do 2 minus 1, we simplify to 1. That's all, and thank you for watching.